At the start of the movie, the Cappa family gets invited to a resort for a holiday trip. The parents, Guy and Prisca, had never heard of the resort before, but nonetheless they are excited. Once they arrive, the entire staff greets them, including the manager himself. A woman then arrives and gives them welcome drinks. After a while, she leads the kids, Trent and Maddox, outside, where several other people are chilling. At the candy station, the kids meet Edliv, the manager's nephew. Trent immediately befriends him, and the two start exploring the place. Meanwhile, Maddox and her parents get into their bathing suits and have a fun time on the beach. At first glance, it appears as if the family is about to have the time of their lives. However, little do they know that they are in for one hell of a horror ride. The next morning, we are introduced to the other families over breakfast. Charles, a renowned surgeon, has come along with his mother. Agnes, his wife, Crystal, and their 6-year-old daughter, Kara. Then there is the comical couple, consisting of Jaren and Patricia. The latter is suffering from epilepsy, which often causes her to have seizures. Even today at breakfast, she experiences a violent seizure, but luckily the surgeon, Charles, helped her up. Meanwhile, the resort manager approaches the Cappa family and tells them about a beautiful beach that lies just 5 kilometers from here. He also mentions that he has already arranged a vehicle and other essentials for their trip. Guy and Prisca are perplexed as to why they are being treated like royalty. Nonetheless, they agree. Shortly after, the family boards the bus and gets ready for their trip. To their dismay, Chris and his family also join in, making the trip not so exclusive. After a while, they drive past a gate that clearly says off limits. None of the guests notice it, as they are too caught up in their own activities. Once they reach the end of the road, the driver drops them off and points them in the direction of the beach. He doesn't even bother to escort them there or carry their belongings. Before leaving, he mentions that he will pick them up at 5 p.m. in the next scene. The group continues walking through the forest and into a narrow cavern. From there, they eventually arrive at the beach. It is an absolutely stunning place, just like the resort manager had promised. Wasting no time, both families start unpacking their stuff until they notice a lonely-looking man sitting nearby. He is revealed to be a famous rapper named Mid-Sized Satan. Maddox immediately recognizes him and tries to get his autograph, but her dad tells her to leave him alone. After a while, the 3 kids get to playing and find numerous items buried in the sand. Most of them are toys, while some are other objects that one would normally bring to the beach. It gets even weirder here. The beach doesn't contain a single fish, not even small mollusks. Meanwhile, Trent, being a curious kid, goes swimming alone. He splashes against the small waves and is having a fun time until a dead body comes floating towards him. Terrified, he screams for help, and the adults immediately come to rescue him. The dead body is brought to the shore, and the surgeon, Charles, deduces that she had drowned just recently. He then asserts that Mid-Sized Satan killed her, as there was no one else on the beach when they arrived. The accusation becomes even more compelling when Satan is seen bleeding from the nose, indicating that he had a fight with the woman. The latter tries to explain that he had nothing to do with the incident, but no one believes him. Meanwhile, the little boy Trent keeps complaining that his swimsuit feels tighter. Charles' mother, Agnes, also says that she is having difficulties breathing. Sensing that something bad is happening, Charles tries calling for help. But there is no signal in the area. Just then, the couple from earlier and the Carmichaels arrive there. They have also been dropped off by the driver on the resort manager's orders. The terrified group immediately briefs them about the situation, and hence, Jaren decides to stop the driver from leaving. However, as soon as he runs inside the cavern, he falls unconscious. A few seconds later, he wakes up on the beach with a bad headache. Everyone is confused by what just happened, but before they could investigate it, they learn that Agnes has stopped breathing. The group immediately rushes to her, and Charles tries his best to resuscitate his mother. Unfortunately, all his efforts go in vain. Meanwhile, the Carmichaels are talking to the Cappa kids to distract them. Jaren asks the boy his age, to which Trent replies, 6. The Carmichaels find it hard to believe, as he looks considerably older. Just then, Prisca arrives at the scene and is stunned to see her children. Miraculously, they have aged a few years, making them impossible to recognize. Seeing the chaos unfolding around him, Sidon makes a run for it, and Charles chases after him. However, as soon as they reach the caravan, they black out and regain consciousness back on the beach. Witnessing all this, a worried Prisca asserts that they should find another way out of the place. Unfortunately, every time one of them gets near the large canyon, they lose consciousness and end up on the beach again. This means that they are trapped with 2 dead bodies around them. To make matters worse, the children are aging so rapidly that it will be difficult to find new clothes for them. Panic sets in, and the adults start brainstorming on what to do next. The Kappas believe that a virus is causing all the anomalies, while Charles, who has started becoming paranoid, makes a cut on Sidon's face with a knife. Surprisingly, the cut heals instantly, almost as if it never existed. After a while, Maddox takes Sidon away and asks him the truth about the place. The latter promises that he is as clueless as them. As the two get comfortable talking, Sidon reveals that he suffers from a rare condition that stops his blood from clotting. Meanwhile, the adults also discover that the girl they found dead on the beach was suffering from sclerosis. Just then, Prisca starts losing her senses, and she soon falls to the ground. It turns out she is suffering from a tumor, and this is the main reason why her marriage with Guy was falling apart. Before they arrived on the beach, it was a tiny tumor, but now it has grown up to be the size of a tennis ball. With time running out, Charles decides to perform surgery with the knife he has. However, as soon as he makes an incision, it heals instantly, just like it did with Sidon. To make matters worse, Charles starts talking to himself. Before arriving at this beach, he had displayed symptoms of schizophrenia, but now the disease is taking over. Fortunately, the rest of the group helps him snap out of it so that he can continue with the operation. Charles then makes another cut near Prisca's abdomen, and this time, everyone holds the opening so that it doesn't heal. They only release it after Charles takes out the giant tumor. And as soon as the wound heals, Prisca regains consciousness. She is no longer sick. Unfortunately, their happy moment doesn't last long as they realize that the dead woman from earlier has now turned into dust and bones. Her body had been taken out only a few hours ago, but somehow it has completely decomposed. Prisca, who is a museum curator, examines the bones and explains that something like this takes at least 7 years to decompose. This is when the group finally realizes that time is moving faster on this beach. Prisca calculates it precisely and concludes that half an hour here is equivalent to a full year in human life. Elsewhere, the kids, Trent and Kara, are seen munching on the remaining food. When they return, everyone is shocked to see them all grown up. Not only that, Kara is heavily pregnant with her first child. Realizing that she may give birth anytime soon, Charles and the others lay her down and prepare to get the baby out. Crystal also wants to be with her daughter, but she passes out due to anxiety. When she wakes up, she finds out that Kara has given birth to a baby, but it is now dead. Time moved so fast for the baby that it didn't even get a chance to consume food and build its muscles. Trent looks at all this and becomes confused, as despite being a grown-up, he still thinks like a 6-year-old. On the other hand, Charles has started to lose it. In one instance, he threatens Jaren to go away, while in another, he tells his wife to put on makeup, saying she looks ugly. Charles eventually crosses the limit when he grabs Sigan and repeatedly stabs him with a knife. The poor rapper doesn't even get a chance to heal due to his condition, which prevents blood from clotting. Devastated, Jaren decides to cross the waves and call for help. saying risking his life is better than dying here slowly. After he leaves, Guy slowly takes the knife away from Charles, who, at this point, has become totally paranoid. Seeing this, he suddenly realizes something. All the families that arrived at the beach had something in common. At least one of their members was suffering from an ailment. For instance, Prisca had a tumor, Charles was suffering from schizophrenia, Sidon had a rare blood condition, and the dead woman was suffering from multiple sclerosis. Guy then asks his wife where she got the invitation card. Prisca reveals that she got it from a random sweepstakes that was on the back of her pharmacy receipt. This concludes that the resort owners already knew their medical histories. In the next scene, when Maddox goes for a swim, she comes across a dead body. It is revealed to be that of Jaron. He must have blacked out inside the water and drowned, similar to what happened to the woman from earlier. Seeing him, Patricia cries in agony, while the remaining group becomes even more devastated as they have literally nowhere to escape. However, Kara does not want to give up so easily. She decides to climb up the canyon and almost succeeds in doing so. Unfortunately, just as she reaches the top, she blacks out and falls to her death. Seconds later, Patricia starts convulsing violently and she passes away too. In this way, 2 more corpses are added to the collection. Soon, the day turns into night and the Cappa couple slowly starts losing their senses. At this point, they can't even recall why they are trying to leave this beautiful place. On the other hand, their children have unearthed a book which apparently belonged to the people that came before them. In it, the names of all the people are mentioned, along with their addresses and ailments. Just then, Trent's attention is diverted by a light coming from the top of a hill. A closer look reveals that it is a camera. This means that someone is inspecting them closely. Meanwhile, Charles, who has become a ticking time bomb, slowly approaches Guy to finish him off. The latter cannot see it because he has become nearly blind. Soon, Charles lunges at him and starts slashing his body with a knife. Prisca is just nearby, but she cannot hear it as she has become deaf. However, when she eventually finds out what's going on, she grabs a rusty knife and attacks Charles with it. She manages to make a small cut on his arms, but this is enough to kill him, as the rust immediately enters his veins. Elsewhere, the siblings slowly enter the cave, where they run into an aging Crystal. She doesn't want anyone to see her hideous face, so she tries killing the children with rocks. However, when she tries picking up a big one, her bones break. It immediately heals, but in the wrong direction, deforming her. Crystal died a painful death shortly after. After all the commotion ends, only the Cappa family remains standing. They regroup near the beach for one last time, and Guy says, emotionally, that he loves his family a lot. After saying this, he passed away. Prisca also succumbs to her old age soon. The children are distraught, as without their parents, they are helpless. The next morning, they wake up in their late 40s. Knowing that they will also end up like their parents, Trent and Maddox decide to spend the remainder of their time playing. They start making sand castles, and this is when Trent remembers that the resort manager's nephew, Idlib, had given him a puzzle to solve. Since they have a lot of time, Trent brings out the puzzle and eventually deciphers it. It reads, "My uncle doesn't like the coral." With this message, the siblings realize that the corals have all the answers to their questions. Hence, without wasting any time, they dive into the water and head for the corals. Soon, they come across an underwater tunnel, and as they try to get through it, Maddox's dress gets stuck on a piece of coral. The scene then cuts to a man observing the beach from the hills. He is none other than the driver who dropped the families there. After confirming that everyone is dead, he calls his boss and briefs him about the situation. Then he packs his belongings and leaves. Following this, we're taken to a lab where several prominent scientists are researching different medicines. The resort manager is also there, and he tells everyone that Trial 73 is over. He also reminds them that, because of this breakthrough, They have been able to save millions of lives using their medicines. Here, we get to know that the resort is actually a sham for a medicine company. They use the beach to conduct clinical trials on sick people, so that they can get the results in a matter of minutes as opposed to years. The welcome drinks that they provide to their guests are actually mixed with trial medicines for their particular illnesses. Elsewhere, we see the Cappa siblings, who have somehow managed to survive the deadly waves. They are now back at the resort with the notebook they found on the beach. Soon, they find a police officer who is also on vacation and tell him everything that happened. To make him understand, the siblings even handed him the notebook, which had a list of all the missing people. The cop makes some calls and concludes that the people are actually missing. In the final scene, the medical lab is busted and all the scientists are taken into custody. As for the Cappa siblings, they are escorted home in a chopper.